Newsbrief, Tonk Tonk Games, a development studio set up by Farmer Disney and Pixar animators, has raised $2 million in seed funding as it continues development on its mobile fighting game uFighter. The studio itself has already been around in stealth a few years at this point, but aims to use the funding to set up an office in Austin, Texas and bring on additional staff to work on uFighter. The seed funding round was led by Bitkraft Esports Ventures, and saw additional contributions from Modern Times Group as well. The game itself aims to expand the presence of fighting game-driven esports on mobile, and Tonk Tonk hopes its personalization-focused feature that uses uploaded selfies to create each player's in-game avatar will give it additional appeal on the platform. The 2019 Game Developers Conference will feature an exhibition called Ctrl GDC Games that uses alternative control schemes and interactions. Gamasutra will be talking to the developers of each of the games that have been selected for the showcase. Neon Nemesis appears to be a 4-player arcade game, but a hidden 5th player will make mayhem for the others using a layer filled with traps and deadly mechanisms. Gamasutra spoke with Marcus Ford of Toasty Titan, developer of Neon Nemesis, to learn about the evogenous inspirations that went into the game, how drawing from cartoonish supervillains helped them make a compelling experience for the evil player, and how a song inspired the idea for their sinister arcade cabinet. I am Marcus Ford. My main role was that of a programmer. I worked chiefly on the Racer controller, particle effects, and power-ups. Furthermore, I, along with my team, all partook in the role of designing our game. At the time of creating Neon Nemesis, I was 1 year through my Bachelor degree of game design and programming at Uppsala University. However, before that, I would spend a lot of time world building, creating PowerPoint games, and building homebrew materials for Dungeons & Dragons. Neon Nemesis is a seemingly normal game one might find in an 80s arcade. On the outside of our arcade booth, you'd see a colorful screen, accompanied by 4 sets of joysticks and buttons. At first glance, a majority of onlookers would assume this game only housed up to 4 players. But behind the booth, a curtain conceals the entrance of the 5th player, the Nemesis. They reside within the very booth itself, in a layer populated by their own screen, a chair, and a plethora of controls including rope, crank, lever, pedals, and various buttons of diverse shapes and sizes. Each of the controls activates a specific type of trap or weapon found within the level. We built our game within the Unity engine. Additional tools used during the development process were Hack and Plan, GitKraken, and Photoshop. The body of the cabinet is constructed using plywood, MDF, and some 2x2s. We worked thoroughly to keep it as modular as possible. All the buttons and joysticks are standard-issue arcade machine buttons. The rope, hanging from the ceiling, is a 3-phase power cable, attached to a pulley system, a spring, and a weight. For the lever, we went scavenger hunting at local second-hand stores. We looked at everything from a hole punch to a waffle iron before finally settling on repurposing an old door handle. Most of the inputs use switches that are routed through either one of 2 IPAC4 cards, which in turn are hooked up to the PC running everything. The only exception of this case is the crank. Since we wanted this to have analog movement, we strapped a mouse to the side of its axle to track the rotation. By using these materials and more, we managed to slap our arcade booth together in a garage and get it ready for GDC. We took inspiration from a song called Cackle at Man, by Lemon Demon. It sings a tale of a man who assimilated himself into an arcade machine, and whose sole purpose became to challenge anyone who dared put a quarter in him. Once the initial concept of Neon Nemesis was pitched, our entire team fell in love with the image of constructing a booth capable of housing a person inside of it. We'll still joke about how a simple song became the spark that led us to creating Neon Nemesis. During the early conceptualizing phase, we titled it Mastermind. We wanted the person inside of our booth to feel like a classic evil genius, the sort of villain who demonstrates an enormous amount of power by utilizing a great deal of convoluted tools. The result of following this idea left our end product with two vastly contrasting experiences. As a racer, you must fight against those next to you while struggling to survive the level itself. In a high-speed platforming challenge, on the inside, the Nemesis controls the very world around the racers, and must use their tactical skills to employ the tools at their disposal to eliminate all who dare challenge the arcade booth. Before we began imagining the various tools we wanted to create for the Nemesis, we started by making a list of mechanisms we thought would populate the lore of an evil genius. Once we had decided on our list of mechanisms, we began pitching traps and weapons that would synergize with each specific mechanism. Our goal was to draw a connection between the input required to activate each trap weapon to make it clearer for the Nemesis. Our desire was to create a high-speed competitive platforming experience for the racers, one that could easily be disrupted by the power of the Nemesis. While the Nemesis has deadly traps, weapons, and environmental hazards on their side, the racers are only equipped with their own skill, mobility options, and the ability to collect and utilize power-ups. This was a tricky decision for us. It was the most commonly debated subject within our meeting. We came to the conclusion that making it entirely competitive would be harder to balance, but we welcomed the challenge. When we play-tested the alternative, we would often see the racers ahead of the pack required to stop or slow down to allow those behind to catch up. This caused a lull in the game, making it a bit duller for those ahead, and would occasionally leave the Nemesis with little to do. When it becomes every player for themselves, it raises the tension exponentially as time goes on. As the racers progress through the level, we see players pulling every trick out of the book to deal with their opponents. It all boils down to the final confrontation. As towards the end of every match, it comes to that pivotal moment where one or two racers remain close to the finish line. You can tell that the racers, Nemesis, and even the onlookers are on the edge of their seats. This is what makes Neon Nemesis lively and entertaining. The unique controllers of Neon Nemesis set the mood of the game. From the second you sit down inside the lair of the Nemesis and surround yourself with the control scheme, you truly feel like an evil mastermind. Having a unique input per trap completely separates each tool you have from each other instead of thinking about it as one controller. You see them all as individual components that come together to create something extraordinary, kind of like a cake. And the arcade booth is our oven. It brings every piece of our game together, combining them in the best way possible to create Neon Nemesis. Today, over on the DD channel, System Area General Manager and company co-founder Brandon Wilson dropped by the stream to discuss the making of Astroneer now that the game's left early access on Dental 1. In case you have not checked in with Astroneer's development for a while, it's managed to accrue a large and loyal community that helped make its 1.0 launch a success. Wilson was able to explain why that community took some getting used to for a team of developers whose initial experience was being siloed away from players while working on the Halo franchise. You can now watch the full conversation with Wilson in the video above. For more developer interviews and curated GD talks, be sure to follow the GD Twitch channel. Unity has announced its first annual Unity for Humanity contest, an initiative with a focus on games that inspire meaningful change.